Okay, welcome back to Huge Fans Part 2 of Harry Potter the movies. It's Liz.
And Ed.
And John.
And Katherine. And with us is my daughter, Sarah. Sarah, you want to say hi?
Hi.
Yeah, thanks, Sarah. You have provided some more accurate insight to us, although I cannot believe I'm going to take it back all the way to the beginning. It was a cupboard, you guys.
How did we get it wrong? What is our problem? I think I can do that.
No, I think we did hutch, and then we did closet, and so it's cupboard under the stairs.
I feel like someone said cabinet under the stairs at some point.
I think.
But seriously, a cupboard under the stairs? Is it because it's lifted off the ground? Is it because there's shelves?
It's because they're English. Okay, I'm just gonna,
But
Well, I have an affinity for that because I did sleep in a closet at some point. So
You
closet,
did.
cupboard, it's all good. I
You
understand.
can really
you do.
tie to Harry Potter. But let's get back into it because there is so much for us to know and for us to share with you. And sometimes we don't get it totally right because the world of Harry Potter is huge, like huge fans. So let's get right back into it. That brings us to number 5. Order of the Phoenix. Just that, the cinematography on that one, so dark. David Yates now has come in as the director, and he then I think sees it through the rest of the franchise, which big task and job he took on, but did a fabulous job. And I want to give a call out. John Williams did most of the score, along with some of the composed music by Nicholas Hopper. I mean, the music all through Harry Potter was just so literally magical.
Yeah, actually, it changes more than you think. John Williams only did the full score for the first 3. Patrick Doyle did it for 4. Nicholas Hooper for 5 and 6. And then the last 2, Alexandre Desplat.
All right.
Yeah, and they continue to use Hedwig's themes and multiple parts to it. For sure.
Yeah, layering it in, because you can hear them. It's recognizable throughout.
Interesting.
Well, the tone was set by John Williams. All right, let's say that. So, Order of the Phoenix, really about choosing sides because a group of students that were Harry's parents' age already knew that there was evil in the world of Voldemort and were fighting against it.
It's really like a parallel to Death Eaters coming together and deciding to go evil. This is a group of kids around the same age figuring out, oh, we got to fight this. We actually going to decide to be the other side of that. We're just going to choose not to go through the magical routes and ignoring stuff. We're actually going to start to learn how to fight. Okay.
Really, for the first time, we start the movie and is not in the world of the school immediately. It is the Dementors attacking Dursley,
Oh my
Dudley.
gosh, that's right.
Little whinging.
Yeah.
I gotta say, this is like the turning point for Dudley's character. He really starts to like grow up and not be such a jerk cousin child. And although it's not like a perfect relationship, he isn't like torturing Harry because he has magic, so that's a bad call. But he starts to like show up as like, oh, right, Dudley could be a character too. He can have some stuff. Great.
Oh,
Attack
well,
him.
yeah, because I think that in the book there was a lot more about the Dursleys, but it was always just in the movies, just in the very beginning, if we got any of the Dursleys. So that sort of scene with Dudley and his like hooligan friends, and Harry's just sitting there, the most horrible looking park. I mean, my gosh.
Yeah,
I mean,
very
Lord.
dank and sad.
But now there's this ominous feeling that seems to have penetrated beyond the magical world. And so it just looks like, ugh. And the Dementors basically attacking them, as John said, in little...
Whinging, I think.
Yes. And also you go, wait, like, what are they doing there? Why are they being so far from Azkaban? And not only that, but like, why are they attacking Dudley? So just for us, we're like,
Right.
what is happening? So they've got to get Harry out of there.
Yeah, he conjures his Patronus and...
A corporeal Patronus.
Yes. Wards off.
Underage magic.
Uh-oh, he's in trouble.
Which before, ironically, did not get him in trouble. But he is now in trouble for it. And
Well, he did get in some trouble for whatever he did.
to his aunt.
Yeah, to his aunt.
Levitation charm, yes.
Oh,
But it got
it's
swept over
fine.
Yeah.
The Ministry of
quickly.
Magic wasn't that worried about that one.
But this is now Harry's called out the Ministry of Magic and said, Voldemort's back.
Yes.
And they're like, nah, you're in trouble for using spells now.
Yeah, he did some big magic out in public. That's a no-no.
So now we know that Lord Voldemort from the Goblet of Fire is back in full form. Like
Well, we know, but boy, the ministry
no, the
doesn't
ministry's
wanna,
not acknowledging
yeah.
it. So they're mad at little Harry for spouting out false news, I guess you could put it. And by using underage magic, they're going to use this as possibly something to control him. You feel his fear of this world being potentially taken away from him at that point. And it's palpable because there's nothing for him that he will ever feel comfortable in the quote-unquote muggle world. So
Right.
he can't lose what is both Hogwarts and his magical family. You know, this movie, because of the whole element of Sirius and the family that Harry wanted. And Sirius, who had been cast out of his family because we get to meet the fantastic Helena Bonham Carter playing Bellatrix Lestrange.
Yeah. Ooh, she was great.
So, we have Bellatrix. I mean, what an unhinged performance of perfection. And just her hair choices and the way she carried her body. I mean, that was such a genius portrayal. Just cackling in her teeth and her crazy hair. When they blow off the side of the wall and she's going to be able to escape the prison of Azkaban. I mean, like, it just... insane.
Wow.
But just you love her. So then you realize, here's his cousin. There's deep hatred for each other because she is definitely a follower of Voldemort. So now you're getting how that family was torn apart by Voldemort and being Death Eaters because they were cousins and some went dark and some did not.
Well, he tore away from the dark side of that family.
Right. But he is back at the Order of the Phoenix headquarters is his family home. And it's very dark and
there's that gross elf working there.
Somewhat
yeah.
unappealing. Creature. Just even the name is not fabulous.
And like so many setups that we get, there's an item there that ends up being more important than you thought.
Yep. Basically, Sirius says, because Peter Pettigrew, who had committed the crimes, he was never
cleared.
Right. He wasn't a free man, but he basically said to Harry, you can come live with me. And I mean, to not have to go live with the Dursleys, you felt so happy for him. And if you had not read the books, you had the false hope that this was all going to work out.
What's interesting about that? There's a point in the movies where Hermione's got to basically erase her parents' memories that she exists because they,
that's
they can't
heartbreaking.
really know.
Yeah. Uh-huh.
But it's interesting that just because it's a better place to live than the Dursleys, the results are maybe I won't be next to Dudley and have Dementors attack my cousin, so it's safer for them, too, for him to move.
Well, basically just living in the magical world, not having to play these two sides of existence, which, really at this point, he's not a muggle. He does not want to live in the muggle world.
Right.
He wants to be able to live in the magical world surrounding by his people. And this was going to be the opportunity.
Sirius made that offer at the end of movie 3. Just the first time they're hanging out together. Like, we're going to ride on this...
Hippogriff?
And I'm going to tell you can live with me once I'm not a refugee.
Oh.
But then what I forgot, the Grim, the thing that Harry sees, thinks is an omen of death.
Right. He's roaming around as a dog.
I think the Grim is in book 3.
Yeah, right, yes. Because we're also finding out the Marauders map and that they were all, animagus. So I was
Animagus?
whatever
no?
they are.
Okay.
There's something, for sure.
Anti-magics?
Yeah.
Animal magics.
So just putting that all together and where we are now, because now he's back at his family home. Still with Hippogriff, but...
So the offer was made at the end of 3, but he doesn't actually end up living with him until 5, is what you're saying?
Right, and he also got to go visit him in the cave, which was not in the movies, but...
Gotcha. Okay.
There's so much in the book that doesn't necessarily maybe get to the movies, but...
And then there's also so much in these movies. I mean, they are dense movies.
Mm-hmm.
Yes. So there was very high stakes right out of the get-go in that movie because they go to a court where we're introduced to Dolores Umbridge for the first time.
Oh, she was the worst. Oh my God, so horrific and awesome.
Sadly, Imelda Staunton, it's not nice of her to do that to us.
Oh, but she's so
She's so good.
good. I mean, the characters that get brought into this one up the ante all again of like, wow, okay. So he goes to court and basically because he was able to prove that Dementors were there and he was defending his life and Dudley's life, he can go back to school. But one of those great moments was Albus comes in and says his whole name. It's like
Albus Percival Wulfric Brian Dumbledore?
Brian, where he just drops the Brian because it's like all these elaborate names in Brian. So great. And basically saves the day. So Harry then is able to go back to school, and that's where we meet Luna Lovegood for the first time on the train.
Right. Luna Lovegood. Oh my God, she's a delight.
Yes, and she's a Hufflepuff. And
Well, that makes sense.
very unique personality. Basically, Luna Lovegood gets all embarrassed saying Lovegood. It's like, okay, relax. It's kind of a porn name, John. Okay.
Okay, I just don't quite remember that in the movie, but if I am thinking of what was going on in the movie, I think she was just embarrassed about Luna, and she knew her because she knew the other girls from her class, but she was like,
Well, she's friends with Ginny, right?
Correct. But it was like, well, I'm introducing it to these boys who don't know her, and I'm embarrassed about her. That was my read on the situation.
I got it more like you're saying a name that's like provocative. So, anyways, so, we're on the train. It is going back to school, but the tone has changed because of Cedric. It is definitely a different vibe. And you have people at the school that do not believe Harry, that Voldemort is back. So that's a really hard position for him to be put in. So
these adults, what jerks. They're not going to listen to the kid that survived and was the person that basically killed him. If he's saying he's coming back, what kind of jerks are these adults?
Well, I mean, he's had a fantastical story every year. How are we supposed to believe him this year?
Yeah, why is it always you three? I asked myself that same question, Professor, and it is pretty true. So then you get to school and you think, okay, now he's safe. It's going to be a good environment. And once again, the opening feast presents you Dolores Umbridge is now going to be
Defense Against the Dark Arts teacher. Oh, no, that is terrible.
Can I give a speech? Just Professor Dumbledore's like, look
that
at it.
Side eye look he gives her is so amazing.
Fantastic.
Like, oh, you're going to talk. Oh, okay.
But now it's like, oh, the ministry, as Hermione said, the ministry is at the school. Like there's an inside line to report to the ministry that she's going to be that person. And God, she is such a jerk. And they did such a fabulous job with her pink outfits.
Her office with the cat plates.
Pink sugar in her tea. I mean, just...
Everything.
And it was like Pepto-Bismol color, so it almost made you sick to look at her. I mean, just what a jerk. So this is sort of the unraveling of what is going to be the safe place of Hogwarts. Because Umbridge is so awful there. And that's also where the rebellion of Dumbledore's army also forms.
Yeah, that room of requirement stuff ends up being so good.
Right, so fantastic. I think this becomes one of those, I don't say it was like transitional, but obviously some things happen in this movie, but what do you think are some of the pinnacle moments that happen in it?
Between the room of requirement and them all training in Dumbledore's army, because we got like a little back and forth in a couple of the other movies of one-on-one, seeing them all really try to get up to speed to be able to do what they're going to have to do for the next 3 movies, which is go to battle as 18-year-olds. Hey! So
right.
That was like seeing them put the time in the movies for the characters so that you got it, because they were not getting that out of different Defense Against the Dark Arts teachers. Not a single one of them giving them any good lessons.
Well, hey. Lupin did a lot of practical, very helpful things. And they also got to meet that first time in the Hogshead. That was fun.
Actually, speaking of Lupin, I wanted to bring something up. I was watching a behind-the-scenes interview where Daniel Radcliffe brought to the director of Goblet of Fire,
Mike Newell,
that he would like to dress a little bit closer to Lupin's character, like the tie that he's wearing when we start to go into the room of requirement and start to show everybody how to do spells and stuff like that.
Professor.
He's seeing himself in a role where, like, oh, even though that's my uncle that I love, who's an animagus that turns into a wolf, I actually kind of identify with this teacher who turns into a werewolf. I kind of go in that direction a little bit. So he starts to wear the tie a little bit loose, the unbuttoned collar, emulate that style. Daniel Radcliffe brought that to that character.
Oh, that's interesting.
That idea.
Oh, okay. Yeah. And I mean, I love Umbridge's whole arc, and of course her comeuppance with the twins in the end is so fantastic, and also going into the magical forest.
Yeah, we also got Hagrid's half-brother.
Oh, right. Emma Thompson, down. Hermione, like, down, put me down.
Professor Trelawney getting fired. So sad.
Oh my goodness.
Don't fire the cool hippie teacher who tells the future. What's wrong with you people?
Well, because Umbridge had to get it under control. And I just think that, I don't want to say it was a lighter, because now we're heading into the last 3 that are a lot.
That movie was light maybe up until the very last 10 minutes when they have the big fight with all of the glass baubles that they completely destroy. Only hundreds of years of predictions. We just ruined this afternoon. Oops. That there's a big battle at the end of it. And Bellatrix kills Sirius. And apparently, because Sirius had been part of the movies for a long time, and through like the age at which these teenagers are like experiencing working with Gary Oldman as a really serious actor, like Daniel and him had a pretty good working relationship. There's interviews where they say they talked a lot on set. That him dying in that scene, you don't get that audio, and apparently no one's ever heard it. Like it's recorded in the scene, and Harry like screams, And that's not in the movie, and no one's ever heard it because it's so real in that moment.
Yes, Sirius's death, although he comes up in the later movies in different ways, his death was obviously so heartbreaking for Harry because his family is gone, his godfather, and sort of that hope of their relationship that they could have had, and a tie of so many memories of his parents as well. So yeah, and Bellatrix, just what a jerk, like kind of skirts out. They're like, whoops, killed my cousin. It's like, oh, what the hell? And then also realizing that Harry, because he hears the prediction of the fortune-telling ball, that was a big reveal as well, which I think was more explained in the book, but I don't know if you would have totally got all the levels with Longbottom in the movie.
Right.
So, all right, now Half-Blood Prince, which I think is probably one of my favorite out of all of them, because there's a lot of Snape in it.
I feel like there's a lot of teen drama.
Yes.
In the first 2/3 of it.
Mm-hmm, exactly. A lot of emotions.
It is the most Twilight of the movies. Very teen drama levels.
Oh my gosh, I meant to make the
I
comparison.
do love that scene when they first, they didn't think they were going to get to go to, advanced potion making. And so they're joining the class, and we didn't bring a book. Well, you can borrow from the store cupboard. And them fighting silently to get the non-old book was so fun.
Because the movie starts off with Harry being asked by Professor Dumbledore to go on sort of a little errand with him. And that is where we meet the amazing character played by Jim Broadbent, who is so fantastic as Professor
Slughorn.
Yes, Slughorn.
Slughorn, amazing.
Who really just wants to be retired and to stay out of all this mess.
He just wants to be a chair, because isn't he a chair?
Comfy piece of upholstery.
But it is time for you to get in the fight, and you're going to come back as the potions teacher, because a big shift is Severus Snape, who always wanted to be the defense against the dark art teacher, finally got the assignment.
Oh, thank
So when
goodness.
you talk about them fighting to be in that potions class, they never would have wanted to be in the potions class with Snape before. And now being Professor Slughorn, it was like, oh, yeah, we'll be in this class. Harry, sadly, because rarely does Ron get the new, better looking anything.
Yeah.
That, I think Harry fought for it, but then gave up and got the much more tattered, annotated book that he feels like almost like he got slighted on. Little did he know. Bum, bum, bum. And that first whole scene with him making liquid death. Was it? Did I get it right?
Draft of Living Death? Or
I think
Draught
so,
of
because
Living
there's
Death?
Liquid Luck, which is Felix Felicis.
Which I think is the
That's-
reward for making this.
Yes.
Right.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And it's so fascinating because Hermione is just beside herself that Harry is getting this right, because she's by the book. And
The book is not perfect.
there's additional instructions in there.
This, again, very teenagery, angsty home ec vibes in this class.
It's great. It's so good. Going back to what you said, Sarah, there's a lot of teenager elements. Lavender Brown and her mad crush on Ron
wow.
is so fantastic.
It's a lot.
Love?
Yes. And I mean, listen, poor Ron barely survives the girl crushes that are come at him.
What is it? What we have, it's chemical or something. You can't stop it.
John, what did you say?
Love. Come on.
Love?
No, Ron.
I think it goes both ways.
Oh, yeah. She had a lot of nicknames for him. She was very fun to see what should be happening at a boarding school with a bunch of teenagers. There should be making out and you're like, okay, this is about right. And it was a lot of fun, and how much it annoyed Hermione, and Ginny is with Dean and all those emotions. And it's like, oh boy. We meet Mrs. Malfoy, Narcissa, and she's fabulous as well.
Interestingly, she was actually up for the character of Bellatrix Lestrange, but was pregnant, and it went to Helena Bonham Carter instead.
She's since passed away, that actress.
That is correct.
Very sad.
So this is one of those movies that, because of trying to figure out the Half-Blood Prince is, and using the book to do spells that are really beyond Harry's capabilities, and Hermione having a real problem with that, is, those are elements of it that are really interesting. And knowing also that now the world's sort of acknowledging that Voldemort is back and the danger that he brings, and
Right.
how are they going to fight him, and the Ministry really being complicated about it, not necessarily being supportive, and Dumbledore is trying to run the school a certain way and still running up against it, although we've thankfully no Umbridge in this movie. I mean, that was
She was so challenging. Oy, oy, oy.
but I love the Slug Club.
Oh, yeah, the dinners.
with Cormac, who wanted to make out with Hermione.
Ooh, that was, again, Sarah, to your point of like, that's some teen scene stuff going on. It's like,
So
woo.
good. Just all those levels of what, Neville Longbottom, like, be so exciting to, like, I could never make the Slug Hub, but I'll just, like, work it, man. It was like so, and that's like that character played by Matthew Lewis. I mean, he is definitely one of those kids that really matured. I mean, had a massive growth spurt. And I was like, oh, look at you. And I mean, that was a lot of fun. Like, because he would come back, there'd be enough of a break, because this was 2009, so it'd been over 2 years that we had like seen them on the screen. And really, for the most part, none of these actors, the kids, did anything else in between. Maybe the adult actors went and did other parts in between, but the kids did not.
This was their main thing.
Yeah, so we didn't see them in other things in between. It was like, if you didn't see them for 2 years, it was a impressive or drastic growth spurt or change in their appearance. And they definitely have more independence from both their parents, and Ron Weasley and his brothers are not at the school anymore. We got to see their magic shop, which was so fantastic.
They had their big exit and then they opened their magic shop.
Yeah, that was very well suited for those two, like perfect. So, and this is Professor Snape's sort of one of the arcs with Harry that is very big, because it's revealed, like, sorry, spoiler, that he is the Half-Blood Prince in the end, once he is on his way out, right after Professor Dumbledore is killed by Snape.
Yeah.
But you don't understand all, because Draco was really the one assigned the task to kill Dumbledore. Tom Felton did such a good job of the weight, the despair, the pressure that was being put on him to do that task. And that is why we see his mother and Bellatrix Lestrange in the very beginning of the movie, which I was like, what? Professor Snape has his own like apartment with lots of books, and Peter Pettigrew is there because he's now really got to embrace that I am a Death Eater, and he makes the unbreakable bond.
Right, that sort of double agent thing that's going on.
Which, so much. And now the Death Eaters are really kind of roaming, I don't want to say free, but they are a presence that is very ominous and very threatening, especially outside the world in Diagon Alley and places like that. So
yeah, you're very right. Tom Felton's performance across this movie is amazing, because he's really conflicted. There's so much going on with his family and this idea of what he's supposed to do, which you don't fully understand while you're watching the movie. It's pretty amazing.
And you get the feeling that, of course, I mean, he's got the family loyalty, but there's the side that, these are kids he went to school with, even Harry. I mean, it's like, really? I want to bring this evil into this environment? So when it comes down to it, no, he really couldn't do it. And Professor Snape had to step in and fulfill the unbreakable bond and kill Dumbledore.
Right.
That we don't understand the promises that were made or the dynamics or relationships between them at that point. If you're just watching the movies, you don't understand that it's so hard at that point, because you're like, you're so built to hate Professor Snape that when he does this, it's just like, you're the worst, right? Because you're not getting all the layers. And when he's charging out of the castle, Beatrix is like burning down Hagrid's cottage, and basically about to kill Harry. It's once again Professor Snape that stops that even from happening, because he's like, no, it's Voldemort. It's left for Voldemort. And he reveals that he's the Half-Blood Prince. You're like, good Lord, you're such a complicated, in-depth character. But you understand Harry's deep hatred for him at that point.
Oh, sure.
And our sorrow because Cedric, and now here's Professor Dumbledore, is dead. And the whole school is mourning his death.
It's interesting. For the character Malfoy, the idea of him having to make a decision like that as a teenager, that was going to change his life. And that's partly what I feel like Dumbledore and Snape are realizing is this is how someone goes down the dark path. This is how someone becomes a Death Eater. They get them to sign into this, and then they make them do something so bad, it changes them. And then they're in. They take that away from him, and I imagine if he had done that, if Malfoy had killed Dumbledore, Harry's a better wizard at that point. He'd have just killed him right then. Like, you just killed my father figure, you're done. Whoop! I haven't figured out how to stop myself from that. But because Snape does it, that is someone he can't beat yet. He doesn't have that power. He can't fight against Snape, or even if he felt like he could, he'd be beaten. So it's almost like Snape takes this problem on as a grown-up because he knows it would destroy this kid. And even the results of that is it wouldn't just destroy that kid. He would be in the middle of this fight. and he doesn't deserve to be in this fight. And I'm already in the middle of this fight. So it's interesting that he just kind of takes that on. And then, Harry can hate him for that, but he can't beat him.
But they'd always had a very complicated relationship. And when the first standoff happens, it's just between Albus and Malfoy. And it's when all the Death Eaters appear. Harry knew there's nothing he can do then, right?
Yeah.
And Bellatrix is trying to coax and prod him into doing it, Malfoy. And it's when Snape sees Harry before he goes up the stairs, he gives them the shh, keep your mouth shut. So Harry trusted Snape at that point to go in to save Dumbledore, to fix it. And so there wasn't even time for Harry to even make decisions of what am I going to do? Because he does have a hero complex, but you are still a kid and there's multiple Death Eaters up there that are notorious killers that know. And he goes, I trusted you, Snape. He trusted him, thinking that he was going to save Dumbledore, and that is exactly the opposite happened, and he didn't understand why at the time. Throughout time, there's different ages that we see Voldemort, and this one started off with such an awesome flashback I keep calling them flashbacks, but through the pensive, there was that awesome scene with the very young Voldemort at his orphanage.
Right, the memories. The pensive is memories.
Oh
You're right,
my
not
gosh. So
flashbacks.
it was Dumbledore basically meeting Lord Voldemort, the most dangerous wizard of their time.
As a boy
For the first time, and making the decision to bring him to Hogwarts because he thought he could change him, or he thought he could teach him how to use his talent as a wizard for good, because that's who Dumbledore is. And it was played by Hero Fiennes Tiffin. I mean, what a name on this kid.
Yeah, Voldemort's nephew. Ray
What?
Fiennes,
Yeah, Ray Fiennes' nephew.
It's he is not related. I don't think I ever put that together.
I think we ended up talking about it just recently.
He's so good and evil
was
as a little kid.
John, what movie did you just say he was in?
The Woman King.
Oh, right. Okay, that's right.
Wow. Okay.
And also in the after movies, the movies that are based on Harry Styles fanfic.
What?
Oh, really?
Oh my gosh. Okay, well, all right. It's in the DNA. There you go. So this is also the movie where you have a lot of the teenager element of they're going to fight, and you're starting to get the feeling of because of Dumbledore's army and all these kids who've kind of been brought together, and they understand that Voldemort's alive, and then this Professor Snape. I mean, it's just oh boy. But this is also where he really explains the Horcrux and that they have to be destroyed. And this is this horrible mission that he sends Harry on in 6 that is going to lead you into 7 and 8, which takes you out the school, which is so fascinating because up in this point, he isn't in his senior year. So you're so you're going to do a semester abroad and go try to get the Horcruxes. So that's really the 7 and 8, which was one book, a huge book, Deathly Hallows. But they broke it up into 2 movies, premiering in 2010 and 2011. So they didn't take a break in between the 2 movies. And this is, saying of the battle royale of Harry off to make Voldemort vulnerable enough to be killed, because if the Horcrux still exists, he cannot be killed. So the 3 of them, the movie starts off so nice. We're gonna be at the Burrow and we're gonna have a family wedding, and we find out what we inherited from Professor Dumbledore. Also nice at first, and then it just goes to crap. So I mean, gosh, I was really, you had to attack the family wedding? Really?
Rude.
You know what? I don't know if you knew this. I'm going to do another DNA connection. Domhnall Gleeson,
Oh, sure.
who now plays Bill Weasley, and it's his wedding to Fleur
Delacour.
Yep.
No, is that right, Sarah?
Yes.
His dad was Mad-Eyed Mooney, Brendan Gleeson, in the previous movies. So, damn. And he's become quite the actor. So you have the wedding. They're raising the tent. They've met with the Ministry of Magic, and they've gotten various gifts. Harry was supposed to be left the Sword of Gryffindor, but they don't know where it is. And Ron gets the
Put outer.
outer.
The putter outer?
Yeah.
Is that really what it's called?
I think so.
The Deluminator. Thank you.
Deluminator. Ron's what's this for? I don't know. And Hermione's given a book, which was right on trend to be given to her, and we are not going to know the importance of it until later. So kind of dud gifts, thanks Dumbledore. You really don't understand what the point of all this is. So they go into the wedding, and you think it's going to be, a fun family wedding. But Harry at this point is already knowing that he's going to leave to go do the Horcruxes. And so even during the wedding, he is very focused, and he meets Luna's father, and Luna's there, and then he actually sits down with someone that knew Professor Dumbledore basically in his youth and reveals more about his sister and his family's history. And because it's like, really, you sent 3 children off to find these very dangerous
magical objects
that have to be destroyed.
Well, I mean, that wasn't the plan, but now that's
Are we sure? It's like, are we sure about that? So the Burrow had been previously attacked in the movies, but somehow was still enough intact to host this fabulous wedding. but it all goes awry. So then really, because it gets attacked, the ministry gets attacked, and at the same time by Death Eaters, so does the wedding. So that immediately causes Harry, Ron, and Hermione to take off from the wedding, just the 3 of them alone, basically in their wedding clothes. So, they have none of their stuff with them, they think. And they arrive in the middle of busy London, but it's also Harry's birthday, so the trace of where he can't perform or alarm's going to go off, these have performed underage magic, has been lifted. Remember, Hermione was very upset they did not have a cake for him.
Sounds great.
Why do you doubt the look you give me?
No, sorry. Unfortunately, I didn't come in with all of this completely memorized, which is what I would want.
No, it's totally fine.
Because I'm thinking of the book when I think his birthday is the day before. But
we're doing it on the movie. So true.
Which, how did Hermione not have a cake in that purse?
She probably did, but it got crushed.
I know. How are things not
books.
jostling around in there?
That happens. All the books get knocked over. We know this.
She's got a mug. All she needs is like a little cake packet, and she can make a mug cake for him, right?
Oh, jeez.
Oh, mug cake.
Anyways.
John's favorite.
So now they're in London, busy London, surrounded by muggles, and they're on their own amongst the muggles, and they've now got to go find these Horcruxes. And right away, they all are in this really unappealing looking coffee shop trying to assess what they're going to do.
I did like them out in the world, though. I mean, it looked so cool.
And they looked uncomfortable enough, especially Ron, like, oh, okay.
What's going on here? This is weird.
Yeah. Okay.
Is food going to just come up through the table or what? No.
There are moments you're like, so have you never heard of a cappuccino? Like, what is going on? Like, there's just a moment with the Weasleys, like, a rubber ducky, a cappuccino. There's certain things like, what? Have you never heard of this? But they're like, oh, I love when like a turnstile, like a escalator. You're like, what? Come on.
Escapator, come on.
Escapator. Well, yeah, they have their own twist on it. So right away, we realize how much in danger they are because the Death Eaters attack them in the coffee shop. So now they leave this coffee shop in ruins and go actually find the Horcruxes.
I'd say, if I could pick up right there, I'd say some of my favorite things that happen in these 2 final movies. One is, Sarah knows that I love this. Anytime an actor has to play a different actor, so when it's Bellatrix Lestrange and, I don't know, 2 other people, and they are pretending to be Harry, Ron, and Hermione in the bank.
Yes.
So it's basically like these actors doing a version of what they think this other actor would do, trying to pretend to be them.
Yes.
I love that whole sequence.
She does a good job. Like, thank you. You couldn't say thank you.
Like,
good morning. Good morning.
Like, no, what?
Yeah.
So that whole sequence where they're trying to get into Bellatrix's, I guess, her vault or whatever, because they think there's a Horcrux in there. Mm-hmm. That whole sequence is amazing. And of course, when they get in there and everything just keeps exploding because everything they touch multiplies, that whole sequence is amazing. And then, of course, they end up leaving on the dragon. So it's like, wow, that whole thing. Sarah just reminded me that they got stripped out of the Polyjuice potion by going through
the Thief's Downfall.
The Thief's Downfall, right? That strips any magical charms or whatever.
Oh, right.
Within the bank.
Within the bank.
Right.
Yeah. So, and then of course that sad dragon. Oh my God.
Finally free.
I know. He was nice to give him a ride.
I mean, how many muggles did you have to go back after that to like, you did not see an albino dragon flying over London out into the countryside. Oh my goodness. But Hermione being a genius to figure out a way out of there.
Yeah. Well, so that, and then the other thing that was such a huge standout for me visually was the animated sequence about the Deathly Hallows.
Deathly Hallows, right, yeah.
Oh my God.
That was beautifully done.
Just stunning. Mm-hmm. Just stunning. Yeah.
And very stark. Like, it was primarily black. and like almost earth tones or natural tones behind it. So
Yeah, it was like shadow cutout looking, almost like, what did you call it, Sarah?
I called it shadow puppets, but it's not really puppets. It's more like paper kind of looking.
Yeah.
I mean, so cool.
I mean, obviously done not organically in that way, but made to look like that, where
Right.
it's like, you
Although
know.
with the Marauders map where it actually moves and shows you real-time things,
yeah.
and the photos that they do that are always like live in the newspaper, why wouldn't you just have a children's book that is an animated cartoon? Open
Oh,
it.
that's so
and
interesting,
And
yeah.
each page is telling you a little story, and then and then everyone stops and like stares at you like, turn the page, dude. We're over. Turn it.
Yeah, so that animated style I thought was just such a great choice and beautiful.
All right. Well, as far as these last two movies go, they're really building up to this big battle at the end where all the characters that we've seen through these movies that haven't died get to like show all the way up, and we've been watching these kids, this whole class of kids, some of whom were like, I don't remember what. Are you a Ravenclaw? Are you a Hufflepuff? I don't know. It was unclear through 7 years of school with you where you ended up.
They were all the House of Hogwarts at this point, defending their school.
It really ended up being like this whole school full of kids, regardless of what class or what side of the school that they took. They all grew up, and like we get all these almost adult characters, because from 2001, when the first movie came out, they were cast earlier than that. They're all trying to look around 11. These last movies are coming out almost 10 years later, where everyone is now almost in their 20s, if not in their 20s, and really grown up. And you could believe that they're going to have this big battle with these adults that we've been watching the entire time, who haven't changed, unless someone dies, that they're going to be able to show up and fight them. It's not going to be like kids versus adults, and we have to buy into 50 kids beat 50 adults. No, these are like 50 adults versus 50 adults, and they kind of wreck the school, but it's magic, so they'll fix it.
Yeah, they kind of wreck the
because
school.
number 7, which is part 1 of Deathly Hallows, is pretty much out various locations, finding Horcruxes and destroying them, and then part 2 brings them back to the school, which is now run by Snape, ironically, and 2, I think, other Death Eaters. So the school looks really miserable, but one of the first things that happens when Harry shows back up through a porthole from, who knew, Albus Dumbledore has a brother who runs like sort of a pub with a portrait hole that leads through a tunnel back to the school. And when Harry shows up, one of the first things he does is confront Snape. And it was really cool. They showed in slow motion when he's confronting Snape, like, you killed Dumbledore. There's 2 Death Eaters next to him who could have killed Harry and were about to attack him and students. And one of the first things Snape does is a spell that knocks the 2 of them out before he is battling both Harry and Professor McGonagall at this point to then escape, right?
Right.
So he was always, there's so many layers of him always. So now Harry's back at the school for this battle, which is students, the magical creatures, and ghosts, and Professor McGonagall's, her big spell that she brings down the...
all the statues. She animates them.
I've
That
always
was
wanted
great.
to do that. I've always wanted to-
so great.
But you have the Weasleys there, the parents, right? They're not they don't need to be at the school, but they're realizing the final battle for the magical world, whether it's going to be run by the evil Voldemort or good will prevail, is going to be held at the school. So you have witches and wizards that maybe wouldn't have had a reason to be at the school, but because this is happening, you have Lupin back, you have the Weasleys.
We haven't brought up Tonks. She was great.
Tonks was
is so great.
awesome.
Yeah.
So you have all these characters coming back to really do what is going to be the final battle. And this is a sacrifice that Voldemort never would have made, which is when Voldemort says, you have fought valiantly, and he does that weird, creepy voice that gets in everybody's head. But, your time has come. Send Harry to me.
Yeah, just give up.
Right. And at this point, we are all heartbroken because we've lost one of the Weasleys, one of the twins. And there's been some other loss that you've seen, and you're just like, wow, the toll is going to be high here. The cost, you could see where someone's going, is this worth it? Is Harry worth it? And Harry takes the decision out of anybody's hands.
Well, yeah, by the time he's made that announcement, Harry has witnessed him kill Snape and leave already.
And he understands more about Snape at this point, right?
Right, because, he doesn't kill him. Nagini attacks him, and then
snake.
Snape passes the memory, so then Harry views those memories.
And he fully, I think, has a much more clear perspective and idea of who Snape was as pretty much a double agent the whole time. And why he was willing to do it was because of his love of his mother and the Patronus that he saved Harry with, which was the same Patronus as his mother. So, I mean, I think there's just layers that Harry goes, wow. And, Harry at that point decides to sacrifice himself and go into the forest by himself. And, Ron and Hermione, there's a very heartbreaking where she kind of knows he has to go by himself because Hermione always gets it before Ron.
Oh, yeah. I mean, that's a running.
Ron's always like, what's happening? Hermione's like, no, Harry, no, Harry. And, he has to go. And there was a couple hero moments in this movie because we obviously have a lot of sexual tension, I'm just going to say it, between Ron and Hermione, but they haven't really acted on it yet. But
Harry was in the tent the entire last two movies. What are they gonna do?
Ron was also a jerk in part one. I mean, he abandoned them and then came back, and she was really mad at him. And it was like,
Well, they were also under a lot of stress because they had a Horcrux with them.
They were
That's
wearing
no good.
the angry necklace. Exactly.
Yeah. So now they're back, and those two are on the mission to destroy one of the Horcruxes. Which Ron, he's so smart. It's so shocking. He has the idea of taking the basilisk tooth and shoving it in it. So, because it's poison, and wouldn't that work? And so their moment down there when they have their big, full, drenched kiss is
your favorite, when actors are wet.
Woo! So they have their moment, and
I think if they had to do that many takes because they kept laughing, and they were like, "You guys, just get through this one kiss, and then we can move on.
Just do it once. Just do it once." Yeah.
And they're like, "No, we can't."
But they've known each other at this point since they were 10 or 11, and don't have that chemistry per se. So it really was acting, which they pulled it off. So now we really have Ron and Hermione together. It's established. And of course we also have the Ginny chemistry. I don't know.
People don't love it.
But that in Half-Blood Prince, that was fully evolved. They were together, and Ginny was going to fight for Harry's life and very loyal to him. And so although she doesn't go on the Deathly Hallows journey with him, they very much reconnect when he comes back in part 2.
Right.
She's very, as Ron says, like, what am I, chopped liver, basically? I'm her brother and doesn't even care if I'm here. So we have his relationship as well. That is a hero moment. They are able to go down and pull that off and destroy one of the Horcruxes. And Harry's now gone into the forest to basically hand himself over to Voldemort. And there's Hagrid, which it was kind of surprising. You're like, oh my gosh, there's Hagrid. He's been captured. And there's all the Death Eaters there, and they're looking very like haggard, but they're now feeling like we might have won this thing, especially now he walked willingly into the forest to basically hand himself over to Voldemort, who is going to kill him. And then as they feel at this point, it's like, well, he's tried before and it's never gone right. So I guess, but this wand that was Dumbledore's is going to be the key wand, because that was so interesting. That's why he killed Snape, because ultimately Snape was the one that killed Dumbledore. Now Dumbledore has it's the Elder Wand, right?
Correct.
Which is one of the Deathly Hallows.
Wand of Destiny.
Right. Thank you.
Wand of Destiny, Deathly Hallows. Okay.
Can we clear up or theorize, was the invisibility cloak one of the Deathly Hallows?
Yes. So then that made Harry the only true master of death, because he was the only one who ever wielded all three.
Right. Boom. And he reaches into his pocket at this point and pulls out what is the resurrection stone, which magically appears in there, but might be a moment of need of why he has it.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
And even the term resurrection stone gives you an indication about what's going to happen. And I know there was some religious groups that took umbrage with this film. And
umbrage.
Boom. Umbrage.
No pun intended there.
Right. Using terms like resurrection stone was part of it. And this was this moment of a question of his soul and killing off part of it and elements of it. So,
and also the idea of not rebooting yourself, but like this challenge to go through to cut some trauma that has affected you your entire life. It feels like you almost have to die to get this guy that killed your parents out of your head now. As you grow up to be a teenager,
to exercise him out of your life,
you have to go, do I want to make this part of my life forever? Is he going to live in me forever? Or do I decide to get him out permanently?
Yeah. So now that Hagrid's there and the Death Eaters are there, and we don't know necessarily in the movie where a Horcrux is living, right?
Right.
It's only revealed in the Snape memory in his conversations with Dumbledore that he has to die. Harry has to die. And so Harry, when everybody's like, oh my gosh, we can't sacrifice Harry, we can't give up Harry. Harry at that point thinks he has to die in order to end this. And he's willing to do that.
Right.
He doesn't know that it's part of him that has to die. He doesn't clearly understand that a Horcrux lives inside of him, and therefore Voldemort cannot be killed unless that part of him is destroyed. And so when he goes into the forest, it's the ultimate sacrifice. And it's heartbreaking, but he has loved, besides Ron, Hermione, and some other peripheral people, he has lost so many people that he's loved that he's willing to sacrifice for the people that are still left for him.
Right.
Including Hagrid, who's right there. And he's like, no, Harry, no. And you're like, oh.
And it's the mirror of what his mom did at the very beginning of the entire story.
It's full circle.
He gets to that point through this franchise. His character gets to the point where his mom, maybe 10 years later, also realized, love is the most powerful thing that you can apply in any of these situations, and it actually is destructive to the evil power that you're trying to use.
And
it's like the exact opposite.
Sorry, when you're saying 10 years later,
I mean, her character, we see her as like a teenager in high school. She gets married and has a kid.
Right,
Obviously she's grown past Harry's 18 years old. She's like, 25 or 27 when she makes that discovery
more
and
mature
choice,
decision.
and that basically saves Harry's life.
Right. So, of course, Voldemort, the jerk, like immediately is like, fine, I'm just going to kill him. Boom, boom, right here, But it has never appeared to be that easy for you to kill Harry. I mean, this has never gone smoothly. And at this point, I think Harry has Draco's wand.
Yes.
Because
He's had to borrow.
Yeah, well, he dewanded him at the Malfoy's home in that awesome scene with Dobby and Bellatrix, and that I gotta give a little throwback once again to Tom Felton. That moment of where Tom could have said it was Harry, and it could have ended right there. But there's always been a level of Draco that was not able to fully embrace the Death Eater dark side of what his family wanted for him, which his mom didn't really want for him, but his dad. And not saying, yes, that is Harry Potter, basically saved Harry's life in that moment. So then Harry is seeing his parents, and, they're basically guiding him to the other side. Like, we'll be right here with you, which, because he had comfort at that moment, he trusted them and had faith that this was going to turn out in a way that we maybe all could not predict at that moment, because the spell that's being thrown at him was, Sarah, our in-house scholar,
Avada Kedavra.
Thank you. Death, instant.
Don't say it so loud. Gosh, you get us in trouble.
Don't direct it at me. So that's the moment that it's like he should be dead. And there's that really interesting scene that he almost seems like he's in purgatory, where he wakes up in a train station where you can choose to go a particular way or another way.
What direction do you want to go?
Mm-hmm. With Dumbledore, and it's explained to him there's that horrible creature underneath sort of one of the
benches,
the train benches that seems to be dying, that is the part of Voldemort that was in Harry that is dying. And you just have this realization of like, oh, he had to kill this part of himself that has been there since basically an infant in order for even himself to survive. And then, it's kind of nice here. Do I need to go back? And it's like, well, it is your choice. And he chooses to go back. And, that is another very, you want to give them moments of props, the Malfoy family. Not so much the dad, but, Mrs. Malfoy, who she is the one that opts to go see if he's dead. Because like the Death Eaters at this point are like afraid of Harry, because that kid has not been killed. And there's always like, if I touch him, am I going to turn to stone like the first movie, like, disintegrate? Like, what's going to happen to me? So when she bends down and realizes that he's got a pulse and says all she cares about, like most mothers would, it's like, is my own son alive? And because Harry does the slightest nod that yes, Draco Malfoy is alive in the castle, it's like she's got something to fight for now, and she wants to get back to the castle. So it's like, yes, he's dead.
Well,
and
also, it didn't work out to be on the side of the Death Eaters. I mean, if they'd been winning, I think she'd have been like,
no, she's like, holy crap,
Harry,
he didn't kill him.
Win.
She's like, oh my God, he did not do it again. Like, God, Lord Voldemort, you're really losing your edge. I mean, so this is a teenager.
Team Volda, maybe.
Not. Volda, not. So that scene with Hagrid carrying little Harry back into the castle, and Ginny kind of very stressfully asking, who is he carrying? And they realize that it's Harry. And, everybody's just so distraught that he's dead. But then you really have the hero moment of Neville Longbottom, man.
Neville Longbottom. That is a great moment. Him just standing up and just, woo, good for him.
Because Harry is...
Great performance.
Even though he's not here, he still stands for something, and we should still all stand for it and not buckle underneath Lord Voldemort, who really... This is a disgruntled, discarded teenager still being a dick. I mean, he's back at his high school where he wasn't being accepted, and he's like, now I'm going to rule the school, assholes. Who's on my team? And basically, no one still wants to be on your team.
Yeah, get out.
Oh, my gosh. So that just was like, he's like so happy, like, hey, coming back, king of the high school. And it's like when Harry kind of falls from the arms of Hagrid. I mean, the Death Eaters popping up and leaving immediately. Voldemort and Bellatrix's reaction of betrayal is so great. Like, you jerks, where are you all going? And then you realize that, like, oh, now the battle's on and everybody's invigorated on the Hogwarts side because Harry is still alive, like not even really that ruffled looking, like ready to get right back in it.
I know that this joke would be lost on all of the magical community because I myself am a muggle. But Harry truly is like the Energizer Bunny. They wouldn't get that joke because they don't know what a battery is.
Right.
But for sure, he is like, keeps coming back. He's still alive. He's still going.
Well, I would say it goes right back to the boy who lived. It's the same thing. It's the boy who lived.
That really becomes almost the mono fight at that point. There's fights going on, and we have Neville Longbottom's awesome moment where he takes and kills because the Gryffindor sword appears at the moment out of the sorting hat, which... I mean, that sorting hat just happened, like, it went from the Great Hall out into,
whatever,
just how to get out there, but we're just going to take that leap.
It's got a mind of its own, literally.
Yep. And he finds the sword, and he's able to kill...
Nagini, the snake,
which was another Horcrux. And that's really where, I think at that moment, Voldemort, we see it on his face, like, oh my God, I have no more Horcruxes. It's just... moi.
Me in this long dress.
And that whole sequence
weird
where...
Voldemort is having the best villain moment that we all have always enjoyed from like the 70s. Those ruinous kids, they're wrecking my plan.
Yeah.
It's all the way back to Scooby-Doo.
Yeah.
Those damn teenagers.
Yeah.
So, I mean, that was a very weird sequence, or odd, when they are flying together and almost swapping faces. Tom at this point, come on, Tom, let's finish this. That was a little like, what is happening here? I thought, no, don't get any more Voldemort on you. Cootie's on you. Get him off of you. But that just showed you the strength of Harry at this point, where he was like, no, we are going to battle it one-on-one. It's just you and me. No one else is involved. No one else should be involved. And he was not afraid of him anymore.
Right.
So that really was that moment. And when they are just, I don't know, it was so great. The whole courtyard had cleared out at that point. Everybody's like, hey, we're going to let you two bullies, it's like the, meeting out in the courtyard after school.
It's the 3 o'clock.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah.
We're just going to let you two do it yourselves, basically. Yeah, so we're going to steer
Excuse
clear.
us.
We're going to steer clear. And really that moment of just the clashing of the spells at each other was so fantastic. The special effects were incredible.
Yeah.
Nominated for a couple awards, yep.
And they absolutely should have been. They were really spectacular to watch because it's really good versus evil. Love overpowering Voldemort and it disintegrating him, basically. And that was such a, it was so fantastic how they did it, but it was so gross. There's a sense of the relief from Harry of where he falls to the ground. It's like, it's finally done.
Yeah, it's really over.
Yeah. Because up in there, there was always some lingering, he was always in some little corner. He was always now on someone's back of their head. I mean, he was in sucking unicorn blood. Voldemort could not have been killed. And until we learned about the Horcruxes, he never would have been. And then you have those moments of Longbottom deciding, him and Luna Lovegood sitting next to each other, right on. Ron and Hermione are together, and Ginny, and then they gave us the gift where they jumped at that point basically to quite a few years in the future, where we're at the train station 9 3/4 again, and a school year is starting, and we're like, who's going to be getting on the train? Oh, we've aged Ron, Hermione, and Harry,
and also Malfoy.
And Malfoy, who still, had a air about him, but a nod of fine, agree.
I will only fail your student for the first half of the year.
No, Malfoy. No, he's not a teacher. No, Malfoy's just putting his own little, probably, descendant on the train. Love the, Ron's got a bit of a pooch. You're like, okay. And Hermione still pretty much looked the same. because they put her hair up. And now freaking Harry and Ginny got it on. They had 3 children, for God's sakes. And one's already at the school, and this is the middle child who's going. So it was just gave us the sort of the gift to know that they were all okay. They were all good places. They all seemed to be happy. And the world of Hogwarts still exists.
Right.
In the way that we'd all want it to, where the school year is starting and they're all getting on the train and saying goodbye to the parents with their trunks and their owls. No rats, but everybody's getting on the train going to school. And so it really tied it all up magically for all of us.
Yeah, it was a nice ending. I mean, some people didn't love it because they disagree with who ended up with who or whatever. But I really liked it. I like your saying that it was a gift. It was a nice way to make sure that we all knew as an audience, no, it's all fine.
Oh, yeah,
they all grew up and are fine.
It would have been really rough if you give us, like, here's their high school years. Bye.
I mean, we can always come back and who's gotten divorced. I mean, come back. I mean, listen, I'll take anything
I
Harry
would
Potter.
100% take another Harry Potter. The magic is gone.
The marriage, year 15 in every
Yes,
marriage.
exactly.
So there you go.
They are breaking up. The magic is over.
Really, it's such a beloved series, and it ran for 11 years. It's also considered, I think they said, it was one of the few posters or advertisements that went up for the Deathly Hallows 2 that literally all it said was part 2, and everybody knew what that meant because it was such a pop icon cultural moment.
Everybody knew.
Everybody knew that this is how it was going to wrap up. It will go on. I mean, I hope they never remake them in my lifetime because it's just like, I don't need another Harry, Ron, or Hermione. It's like they are just back to what Sarah said way previously, the way they did the Kloves. They did it in a timeless enough fashion that it does not need to be redone. It's beautifully done. The acting was like they got real lucky with the entire cast. I mean, everybody matured and, carried through the entire film except for Sir Richard and his untimely death. So I think it's one of the things I can drop in. I don't need to watch the whole thing from beginning to end. I can drop into number 4 and then start watching 1. Like, I don't care.
Any part of it, yeah.
I just love them and I feel so familiar with them that it's so awesome when you do discover something new or someone's new take on it. And, it's worldly beloved. I just was at Universal last week and I had to go through the castle, and my friend has like problems being dizzy on the ride, so I didn't go on the ride because I want to go by myself. But I was like, well, let's just walk through the whole thing because I just want to like see the greenhouse and I want to see Dumbledore's office. And I just want to walk through it. I had a butterbeer. So right at this time of year, Halloween, I do go on a drought. I do deny myself. After Christmas, I turn it off.
So the drought is not yet. You're saying the flood is happening now. The drought will happen.
Yes, it is a 3-month full, like it can be out my house anytime, day or night.
It is a dangerous collection of movies year round. It could suck you in for the full 2.5 hours by mistake. You're like, I got to watch this entire thing now.
Yep, exactly. So Harry Potter, perfect time of year. The entire movie series, 8 movies spanning the entire scope of all the books. There were only 7 books, right, Sarah?
Correct.
Thank you. Professor Sarah in the house for us. So I just think it's like perfect treat for yourself.
Oh, for sure.
There are some tricks in it, but treat yourself to this Halloween season. Just watch all the Harry Potters back to back, especially if you are a parent and your kid hasn't watched it. That is a very fun thing to watch with your kids for the first time as well.
Oh, absolutely.
So enjoy. Happy Halloween to all of you.
And all the rest of the holidays that are upcoming. You could just watch it straight through Thanksgiving and Christmas for sure.
Very true. Very true.
All right. Well, thank you for joining us for this episode of Huge Fans. Please follow us on all of our social media at Huge Fans Podcast. And we'll do something fun again next month. Okay. Thanks for listening to Huge Fans.